Welcome to the Biz Gone Social podcast. We help entrepreneurs navigate how to get known, get customers, and get the edge over their competition. Here is your host, Lorraine Duncan.
So here we are on the Biz Gone Social podcast, and I am so glad to be here. And my promise to you, as always, is I want to give you just a little bit of verbal caffeine that's going to energize your business and maybe your social media marketing and help you stay social. Because after all, don't you want to be the business that everyone's talking about? I know I do. And I'm so stoked today to have Sidney Wormsby with me. Welcome, Sidney.
Well, thank you for having me.
And Sidney, I want you to just tell me a little bit about what you do and who you serve.
Okay. My role in business is about being a small and mid-sized business growth and improvement coach. So I work with small and mid-sized businesses on growing their top line sales and their bottom line profit.
Great. And, it's funny, there's a lot of coaches out there that say that I'm going to grow your sales or top line. Mm-hmm. How do you do that?
Well, first, a lot do say that. And here's one of the things that I state as a claim and a guarantee. I can find any business $100,000 or more in improvement in 45 minutes or less. And I guarantee that. And, your question is, how do I do that? There are 5 key areas that all business growth comes from. And I focus on those 5 key areas. So there was an Italian accountant way back in the Middle Ages that came up with a theory or concept around Pareto ranking, and because his name was Pareto. It's the 80-20 rule that, as we know it today, that 20% of your actions drive 80% of the outcomes and results. And I apply that to business growth and improvement too. Those 5 categories that I talk about are 20% of the activities that we probably do in any one day or could do in any one day, but they drive 80% of all business growth, probably a little bit more than 80%. So I focus on those things. And by focusing on those things specifically and solely, then you're able to concentrate a business's efforts and activities and really get them to look at what it is that's important and critical to growth, not just necessarily, important to the business. So there are many things that are important to the business that we must do, but they aren't necessarily going to drive growth. They are a compliance issue, for example. We got to do it because, the regulations, government says we must do those things, but they're not necessarily there to drive growth. They're for other purposes or reasons. So that's how I approach it and what I do and how I can hone in so quickly and specifically on what's important for the business. Wow,
that sounds like really awesome. I'm curious, so I'm going to ask it now. Is what are these 5 categories that you look over in a business?
As a grouping, I group them this way: getting more leads, converting more of those leads to actual transactions, paying customers, increasing the number of transactions that those customers have with you, increasing pricing, and then last but not least, increasing profits through productivity or cost-cutting activities. So those are the 5 categories. Now, within those, there are 12 strategies that you use within those 5 categories, but they can be grouped into those 5 categories. If you don't have a lead, you can't get a sale. So starts with leads and progresses from there.
Right. I once heard that, if you're not talking about your business every day, you don't have a business.
And it becomes just a part of who you are. And one of the first things I do with folks is talk about what I call their market dominating position, which is what is it about them that is different from everyone else and that they can say is different than everyone else, that provides value to their customers or clients. And so from that perspective, you are going to talk about your business every day because it's core to who you are and what value you think you bring to the world. and what impact you can have on others' lives. And so every time you're talking to someone, there should be something that comes out of that conversation that you can see, an impact and what you can do to make a difference and to have impact.
Wow. Yeah, absolutely. And all the things you're saying are a very big part of every business. One of the things that I get all the time is, and it's because it's the nature of my business when I do social media marketing, is, everybody wants that return of investment.
Right.
So the big thing is the getting of the more leads. And doing this business now for at least over 7 years now. I started out as a business coach, and then I morphed into a digital marketing agency. But I see that a lot of people are doing the most wackiest things for leads that really don't generate any conversions whatsoever. And right. I'm a big proponent of relationship marketing, that people are going to do business. Of course, you've heard this over and over again. People are going to do business with who they know, like, and trust. But the bottom line is that, are you out there just to get leads and prospect people just to make money? Or for me, because I'm more of a relationship marketer, I want to get to know you. And the more I get to know somebody, and if I start working with them, then I can actually market them better. And I'm sure you would agree with that, yep. The more people get to know you, and I don't really know you well, but from the few conversations that I've had with you and meeting you at a networking event for the first time, I realize that you really know your stuff. And so what is your opinion of the way people are going after getting more leads? It's kind of scary.
It is. And you mentioned it there in your conversation, that it's about outcomes. It's about results. And so everything that we do is to get some outcomes, some results, some impact on the things around us. And in this case, we're talking about managing a business. So if you have a pretty website with nice designs, and you're getting clicks, by the thousands, per hour and per day, but you're not converting those to sales, then what's the point? And so that's why I also start with that market dominating position, because the most important thing is for you to understand what it is about you that's valuable. So it's an internal look that just says, here's why someone should want to interact with me, work with me, be involved with me, because here's what I'm really good at. And then here's the impact that I can have because I'm really good at that. And if that's the impact that I can have, then I need to speak to those customers or clients, or potential customers and clients, in those terms. I always say that people have two conversations, one of two or two conversations going on in their head at all times. One is, here's the thing I have, a problem that I don't want, or here's the thing that I want, a benefit that I don't have, that I want to get. And so their minds are often consumed with those conversations. Well, we have to interrupt that conversation, as a business, we have to interrupt that conversation so that, we make them say, wait, what? What was that you were saying there about so our marketing and our communication has to be able to get through that clutter, interrupt their conversation, and then engage them in a ways that they see value and benefit, from it. So if you're not doing that in your marketing communication, it's not effective. And you've probably worked with folks, they've asked you to come in and say, look at our website. And you say, that's really nice. It's really pretty. Oh yeah, we're getting, X number of clicks a day and but we just can't seem to, get our sales. And it's because the messaging isn't addressing, the problems, issues, or opportunities, needs that they say they're that are important for the target market they say they're going after. And if you're not going to do that, people aren't going to react to it. It's oh well.
Yeah, and absolutely. And, what people don't realize is that, if you look at the Google Analytics and you're seeing all that traffic, that's amazing, but they're not clicking on anything. I mean, the average person, when they come to your website, they're only going to stay on for about 30 seconds if you don't reach their pain point, or if you don't connect with them. And interestingly enough, I see that happen all the time when I look at the Google Analytics and where the traffic is coming from, and it's it's interesting because people think it's all about the website, and it's really not. It's how you're getting people to the website, how you're keeping them on it, and are you capturing a name or something? Are you capturing something? Because it's the same with social media. If you're not capturing anything, then you really don't have a lead.
Right.
Or a qualified lead, I should say.
A qualified lead. Yeah. So it's one of those things that every number will tell you something. And so from my, technical engineering background, et cetera, I love numbers and love reading through financial statements, et cetera. So every number will tell you something, some part of the story. But it's important for you to then understand, well, what exactly is it telling me? Clicks is not the end. Clicks is a beginning that says, yeah, you got to come to my site. But then if I don't have a message, something good to say, then, you're going to keep right on walking by. It's like if you were walking by a brick and mortar store and they had a really interesting display that was all these gadgets moving, et cetera, but they were Tinker Toys and Legos, and you have no interest in Tinker Toys or Legos, you might stop and look and say, oh, that's really interesting and cool how they did all that. And then you would walk away with no action or activity. So the same thing with a website or any of our marketing messages. Yes, we've got to get their attention. We have to interrupt that conversation, but we interrupt it talking about things that we know are of value or of importance to them. Then they'll stick. Then they'll listen for more. They'll ask us, actually, tell me more. And then in the telling more of what we do, why we do it, how we can impact them, they will make a decision, to become a customer.
Wow. Yeah, that's so true. The other thing, I wrote down some of the things that your 5 categories, but price is something, especially like if you're in the coaching industry or, pricing is always hard. And I'm sure you probably, you find a lot of money when you're working with people in the price. Some people don't value their services enough, or some people maybe are charging too much, so they're not converting because I'm not going to pay that price for that. So I always, I go through this in my head all the time when it comes to pricing things. How do you have some kind of, and there's a lot of people, for instance, that are on this call, they're just starting out. They could be starting out. They're coming from the corporate world. Maybe they're, might want to be a coach. Maybe they want to do something in the service industry, like maybe a website designer, or or it's a Etsy shop or whatever. But how do you have any kind of advice for somebody who's trying to find price, for their services?
Well, yes, but it wouldn't be a one fits all comment or feedback or advice. It would be more this. One, have a strategy and a reason that starts with what value you're providing and of what value that is to your target market. So to your point, people will either devalue or minimize their capabilities and services, and therefore, underprice, or they think that, they're the best thing that's, ever been seen on the planet Earth, and they're overpricing, and just say, well, that's my cost, and therefore, that's what my price is going to be. Well, it can't be that either, because it has to be relative to the target you're going after and how they value that item or that service. So the first is have a strategy, and that strategy has to start again with what value do I bring? What makes me different than everyone else? And what is important to my target market? What issue? You mentioned pain point. That's what I was talking about before, about the 2 problems, the one I have, or the problem that I have that I want to get rid of, or the benefit I want that I want to achieve. What is it that your target market puts as value to those things? And they will then allow you to charge a much higher price because they see the value in that thing. If they're not willing to, it's because it's not valuable to them. Don't force it. Or find out why it's not valuable, and then change your product structure, et cetera. So it starts with those 2 things again. One, understanding what your differentiation is. 2, understanding what your target market wants and how they value it. and then start looking at ways that you can deliver more and more of those things in ways that are not necessarily costly to you, but beneficial to them. So here's a couple of examples. One was a client that was a construction company. They did decks, sun decks, etc. And they were going to do the typical, I'm going to give a discount, 20% discount if you buy now, and I hate discounting. It's the one strategy I tell folks don't use. It's not worthless, but it's close to worthless. And so that's what they were doing. And I talked to them about, look for other things that are value or important. There are things that somebody who's putting in a deck wants, needs, would find valuable that have nothing to do with reducing the price. And we started brainstorming some of those things. It might be, taking on the permitting process, that some contractors want, the buyer to do it. In this case, it was about furniture, putting furniture and fixtures in the sun deck that they were going to build, and saying, we're going to provide you a fully furnished sun deck for this price. Now, then it's going out and finding, furniture and fixture suppliers who can provide you a package of stuff at a fairly reasonable cost and price that allows you to charge a bigger price for your product, in this case, that doesn't involve discounting it at all. And that was something that customers valued more. They're like, oh, I can get this, hundreds of dollars of furniture and fixture, or this, several $100s worth of discount and pricing. They appreciated more the furniture and fixtures because now they had a complete experience without having to go out and shop and do all that other kind of stuff. So there are all kinds of things that you can do relative to your offering that will make price a non-important conversation.
Yeah, no, that's good. I was just thinking too, about value and everything. And I was thinking about the health industry, because that's an industry. I think it's $1 billion industry, and people will pay anything, to get the body they want, the health they want, the weight that they want to lose and stuff. And I always, when I'm thinking about the pain points of different people, different businesses that I work for, it's like, it's almost like, what would people pay anything for that you can provide? So it's always a puzzle to me. Is this like, why, here's an offbeat question here, but did you ever notice that like a lot of people will charge, $197, $297, $497, and they have that 7? Do you think there's anything to having the 7 at the end of the price?
So the answer to that is yes, but it may not be as big as folks are. So first, that started long ago as a way to do two things. One was to reduce theft, because it was much harder for people to steal from a business owner. And I'm talking about, in the 1800s and the early 1900s, if they had to make change. So it was harder for them to steal big wads of money or whole sales, complete sales, when they weren't dealing in dollar bills, but had to deal with coins and make change. So it started from that. But there's also a psychological benefit, for not going over a certain price. So $4.97 sounds better than $5. Because then I can also market under $100, under $5, under $20, et cetera. And so sometimes it's a more of a psychological barrier. Earlier, it started off being about, theft. Well, theft is really no longer an issue with all the ways that we transact today, but the psychological barrier can still be, somewhat relevant. It's nowhere near the importance that a lot of people will put to it, but it will have some impact on how people view or see the product relative to, did you go past this point?
Yeah.
But I will go back to the statement I made before, though, that just says, look, if you're really providing something of value, the price becomes of little or no importance, because they already see the value in it, that they say that it's worth it to me to do X, Y, and Z. So that's the important thing. And most people don't see that value. They are only competing, or they don't look at the difference between what they're doing and everyone else. And so the only thing they know to do is compete on price. And that's why then everybody will say, well, your price is too high and I'm going to go over here. And we want to make sure that we're not competing on price. And the only way to not compete on price is to have more value. And that means targeting what's important, those pain points that the customer has.
Right. No, that's good. Now, I usually ask this, but I didn't really have to, because I feel like what sets you apart from other people is your claim. And, I think you said earlier, or you may have told me in a conversation, that you can guarantee that you'll find some, money for them, 100,000. I thought so. Right. Obviously, the companies that you're working with, have to be, mid-sized to large companies, I would assume.
No, I work with mom and pops too. So for example, if you're in startups and turnarounds and the whole 9 yards. So if you're a turnaround, in fact, I just started with a client this past week who is a startup. Well, she's been doing it for a couple of years, but she's at the less than 20,000 in total sales. So she's doing it more kind of like a hobby in terms of her approach, but she wants to be big. It's the same thing there. And in a matter of 45 minutes, talking about what she's doing and not doing right now, we had found over $100,000, actually $140,000 worth of incremental sales and profits. So it's not about where you're starting. It's about, what actions or processes you're doing or not doing. And if you start doing those things, what result or impact will it have, on your business, et cetera. Finding $100,000 with, a $2 million company is really easy, even though it sounds, because it's like, look, you do this one thing, you do these two things, and you're going to be, getting much more than that, et cetera. But it's not that much more difficult over smaller startup company. It's just that they're going to have to do it in more categories, because they're starting with nothing at that point.
Yeah, I actually, when COVID hit, I didn't know what the market was going to bring for me or anything. And so what I did is I looked at it was the first time I really actually did a deep dive into all my expenditures. And literally I saved $3,000 just by how you download an app and then you just you're paying for it, but you never use it again. Right. And so I saved $3,000. My husband and I, we decided to we didn't do cable. It turned out for us, it worked out fine. But literally, it's always good to look at your numbers. I think the numbers tell you everything. They tell you, your profit. They tell you what you're spending. They tell you what you need to do more. The numbers actually dictate what you need to do. And if you're ready to scale, if you're ready to do this, if you're ready to do that. And I feel it's important. I work with a business coach right now that she's a big business coach, but she literally every month, every time we have our group meeting or whatever, we look at our numbers. Right. And sometimes it's not pretty. And I remember when we first did that, I'm not telling her my numbers, but that whole accountability and everything. And it gets easier, if you're not used to telling somebody your numbers. I think that, then there must be something that you're hiding. So I want to encourage everybody out there to, work, if you're not good with numbers or your business doesn't seem to be flourishing, I encourage you to work with someone, definitely Sidney, because he's on the line today. And he seems like he has a strategy and a plan. I'm going to switch gears a little bit, because a lot of people on this line are probably struggling in their businesses or they may be doing well, but maybe not well enough. So I want to ask you what you, as an entrepreneur, because you're in this, you don't have a big company, it's just you, maybe you have a few people working for you, but what do you enjoy most about being in business for yourself?
The easiest part of that answer is the flexibility. So you're always working for someone, even when you're working for yourself. There's always this something that you're trying to deliver based on whether it's, to pay off your loans, business loans for property or, whatever. But the flexibility of being able to say, and I know when I was working with corporate and I worked with Fortune 50 companies, et cetera, when you wanted to implement a strategy, you always had to get approval from someone else on that. And so the flexibility of being able to say, you know what, I believe in this and I'm going to run with it. I'm going to test it. I'm going to put it in place. So some folks might call that autonomy and independence. I really call it flexibility. I'm flexible enough to be able to do or not do, or have the flexibility to be able to do or not do as I see, fit, appropriate, that benefits either my business or my values and my goals. So I can take on a client because I want to support, that individual, even if it's not the best decision for my business. It's like, but I want to support that individual and what they're trying to do. And so I have the ability to be able to do that. So that's probably, for me, one of the clearest benefits that I have. I value, my flexibility and to be able to do, the things that are important to me at the times that they're important to me. So for me, that's the biggest one.
Absolutely. I think hands down, everybody always talks about the flexibility of who they can work with, who they want to work with, the time that they have. All that is all flexibility. Yeah. But we have to be aware of the flexibility because both you and I know that if we're too flexible, sometimes things can possibly get out of hand a little bit as far as.
If you don't plan your time, if you become wishy-washy about going from guardrail to guardrail in terms of, well, I'm going to do this now, and now I'm going to do this over here. Yes, things can go to heck in a handbasket really quick. So it's not about being whimsical or flighty. It's about, again, making choices and having the flexibility to make those choices because, ultimately, you're the last person, in line to make that call. So.
Yeah, and we're the bosses, and we can easily fire ourselves too. No?
That's right.
But we always talk about, and everybody talks about the glamour of being in business for themselves, and it's like you wear this new badge of honor and everything, but there's struggles we have, and I want to ask you, what would you say is your biggest struggle in doing your business?
Well, I'm going to maybe not talk about this business because I've also managed other businesses. So I've had a restaurant group where I had 15 locations and almost 300 employees. And, I've done more strategic coaching versus, the business growth coaching, et cetera. The biggest struggles that I had really when I, had a restaurant group around capital to grow. In the business I'm doing now, I don't really need capital to grow. So, not as big a struggle. It's, about, again, messaging to folks and, what value you provide, et cetera. When you have a business that requires capital, then you not only do you have to run your business well, but you also have to make sure, you were talking about before, that your financials, that you not only understand them, but they're in a place where someone who wants to lend and loan money are going to look at not only can you do what you say your business is about and do that effectively? So do you have skill, technical capability, but is your business ready from a financial standpoint to do those things? Can it support the goals, the vision, the objectives that you have in place? So that can be the biggest challenge for a business, that can provide a struggle or can be a struggle for business owners, and things that make them, stay up at night or worry about how am I going to get to that next place, et cetera. And that's why it's also important to have good plans and to be, strategic about what you're doing and to do what you talked about before, being meticulous and persistent about review of your numbers on a daily, on a weekly, on a monthly basis, so that, you always know where things are and whether you're on track or whether you need to make some adjustments.
Absolutely. So what keeps you up late at night?
I'm not a worrier, so nothing has ever much kept me up. you know from our conversation before, I'm a very spiritual person. And so I believe philosophically and spiritually, there are things you control and things you only influence. And so the things you control them. The things you influence. And if you don't have control or influence, don't worry about it. There's nothing you can do about it. So, worry doesn't, change it, doesn't help it, doesn't make it go better, doesn't make it get worse. So leave it alone. So I'm pretty good at focusing on those things I control and being, persistent and meticulous about controlling those things. There are very few things we control. They usually have to do with just ourselves. There are a lot of things that we can influence. And, so you'll spend your time trying to influence that, but understanding that somebody else or something else controls it, you just do your best to influence. So very little keeps me up at night. When I had that other business, the only thing that kept me up at night was the capital piece. Am I going to have enough capital? And then I could go right back to what we were talking about here and going, I don't control that. I'm going to make the numbers the best that they can be. I can influence that. I can drive that. Whether a banker, a lender, private lender, equity investor wants to put any money in, I can only present the story. Somewhere along the line, somebody will. I'm not going to worry about it. It'll happen. When I, tell the right story to the right person, and I keep targeting, those are the things I control. Who am I targeting for this message? What information are they giving me as feedback? So I hope that answers, but not in a way that avoids.
And I'm also a very spiritual person too. And it just brought me to, interestingly, is, Psalm 103, counting blessings. And the bottom line is there is very little, there are some things we can't control and there's some things that we do, but I do believe that there definitely is a God above that will provide for all of us. And, we have many blessings. Just the mere fact that we're talking on Zoom today is,
right.
A big blessing. And so I want to ask you to give one piece of advice to someone who's either struggling in their business, or this is the last question. So, or maybe just needs something to move forward, that, they have a great business, but they're stuck. What would be one piece of advice that you would give?
I don't know if this would be considered advice. I do also coaching for youth athletes and training for youth athletes. And one of the things I often tell them, especially when one of the, folks I'm training wants to give pushback or, be defiant, etc. I always do this conversation around quote that was told to me, that every behavior or action you have is a decision and choice about who you are choosing to honor or dishonor. And so, I would just tell folks, look at who and what you're trying to honor and be focused on that. Usually bad behavior, bad performance comes from us trying to dishonor something rather than honor. And when we think about honoring something, an ancestor, a value, a concept, a loved one, etc., that's when we start having our best performance and our best behavior. Find the things that you are passionate about. Find the thing that you want to have impact, and then find the thing that you want to show the most honor to or about. And then put people in your surroundings and environment that are going to support you on that. And that's really it. Everything else will take care of itself. It won't always be rosy, it won't always be smooth, but it'll take care of itself.
Absolutely. And there also is another quote out there that basically states that the 5 people that you hang around, you are the 5 people you hang around with. So keep that in mind. It's like, I love, put yourself up to succeed by hanging around with people that are going to make you succeed. And
right.
I think that's great. Great advice, Sidney. And I tell you, I took like 2 pages of notes while I was talking to you. And we could possibly talk forever and ever. And certainly definitely, I know we definitely will, because we do network together. So I just appreciate you. I appreciate you and how you're serving others. So many people are struggling in their businesses, and it always just makes me happy inside when there are people out there that are genuinely serving others in their businesses and supporting them. So thank you so much for being on my podcast.
Well, I appreciate the invitation. I've enjoyed the conversation. I would add one more thing to a comment you made earlier about how do I differentiate? And yes, that $100,000 guarantee or claim is one way, but the other way, which is important to me and a value for me, is how I price. So I talk to folks about my guarantee on pricing that just says, if I'm not delivering 2 times what you pay me each month in improvement, then I will refund the fee. I want folks to understand that it's not about paying me for my time. It's about, again, what results that I'm driving. And that's the relationship I want to have with my clients. It's about the outcomes. So, they can feel comfortable and confident that when they're working with me, that, they're going to, better their position, better their company. And if I'm not delivering that, then I don't deserve a fee. So those 2 things, the guarantee about the improvement and the guarantee about no risk, that if I'm not delivering it, you won't owe me anything.
And if people resonated with you today, how would they get in touch with you?
Easiest way is to go to my website, which is www.solutionswithresults.com. That's solutions, plural, with results, plural.com. And if you go to that site, it will have all my information about my capabilities, services. It will have my phone number. You can send me a message through the contact, which will, go directly to my email. If you additionally want to send something to my personal email, that is SWORM, S as in Sydney, WORM as in mother, _22@yahoo.com. So go to my site, and also on my site, there's a bunch of free information. You can get a copy of my, a free digital copy of my book. You can get some free training on financials and marketing. So it's, again, just part of my commitment to making sure that I'm bringing, value and impact, to others.
That's great. I want to thank you again. I'm going to put all this information below in our podcast, and I share it all over on social media and in my newsletter. And again, you really did add value to my podcast today, and I thank you. And until next week, everyone, I will see you soon. Bye.
Thanks for listening to the Biz Gone Social podcast. Find us on Instagram @BizGoneSocial for extra tips. Check back weekly for new episodes. Until next time, stay social.